In the opening scene, students are seen carrying a flag as they march into the hall, with the word tradition prominently displayed. This is Welton Academy, a place that embodies repression, solemnity, and an untouchable sanctity. Stepping into this institution means one is halfway to success, until the arrival of the new English teacher John Keating brings a refreshing change from the school's rigid traditions. In his first class, Keating enters the room whistling, hands in his pockets, presenting himself as an unusual figure the students have never encountered before. Under his guidance, they visit the school's Hall of Honor. Keating's first lesson isn't about simply opening a book to recite. Instead, he teaches them a Latin phrase that means seize the day, make your lives extraordinary. He encourages the students to stand close to the honor wall, to look into the eyes of past students and remind themselves to live with passion and free imagination along with hard work. It's clear that not all students are cut from the same cloth. Some resonate deeply with Keating's teachings, like Neil and his friends. To them, the school's motto of tradition, honor, discipline, excellence feels more like mockery, horror, decay, excretion. In another literature class, Keating shocks his students yet again by dismissing the conventional method of analyzing poetry through a graph of artistry versus importance as nonsense. He advocates for appreciating literature for its beauty, not treating it like a mechanical task. Keating then does something unthinkable. He asks his students to tear out a page from their textbooks. This act, symbolizing liberation from conventional norms, underscores his belief that poetry and literature are vital expressions of human passion. Later, Neil and his friends discover a group called the Dead Poets Society from school records, noting Keating as one of the founders. Keating explains it wasn't a formal club but a gathering for sharing romantic ideas. The group used to recite poetry in a cave, an experience Keating describes as exhilarating, filled with emotional highs and intellectual liberation. However, he cautions that the school might not welcome such a club now. But the students, fueled by youthful rebellion and the desire to challenge authority, decide to revive the Dead Poets Society under Neil's leadership. That night, they secretly gather in a cave near the school. What starts as a lighthearted meeting evolves into a profound experience, with Neil's earnest poetry readings and his friends' contributions captivating everyone, their applause echoing through the small cave. At that moment, they felt a sense of freedom despite the pressures around them, diverging for the first time from their parents' plans and the rigid school rules. Perhaps this was the passion for life that Mr. John Keating spoke about. During the day in literature class, the students were almost tired of hearing about Shakespeare from Mr. Keating's lips. But Keating was different from other teachers. He brought Shakespeare to life with the demeanor of Marlon Brando's Godfather and the classic American tough guy image of John Wayne, much to the amusement of his students. As the class was about to end one day, Mr. Keating suddenly stood up on the desk, wanting to remind the students to always look at things from different perspectives. He then encouraged each one to stand up and try it themselves, emphasizing that most people live in a quiet desperation, and urging the young not to fall into that trap but to seek new paths from different heights and perspectives. After class, Mr. Keating assigned a homework task of writing poetry, with a requirement to recite it in front of the class on Monday. Todd, who was particularly shy, seemed fearful, and Mr. Keating took special note of him. On Monday, as everyone recited their poems regardless of their length or quality, Mr. Keating offered constructive feedback, encouraging them to undertake any brave act. Todd wrote a poem but was reluctant to recite it. Seeing this, Mr. Keating had him stand in front of a portrait of Walt Whitman and describe the first image that came to his mind. Under Mr. Keating's guidance, Todd's thoughts became clearer, and he was encouraged to ignore any laughter from others and express his innermost thoughts. Suddenly, Todd blurted out a poem that he had just thought of, about how truth is like a blanket that always leaves your feet cold, and no matter how much you adjust it, it only covers your face when you cry at birth or gasp at death, regardless of your screams or pain. The class erupted in applause, and Mr. Keating looked on proudly, affirming Todd's effort. Mr. Keating was not only focused on the students' intellectual growth but also engaged in physical activities like soccer with them. Influenced by him, Neil and his friends took bold steps towards freedom. For instance, one used poetry to confess his love, enjoying the process regardless of the outcome. Similarly, Todd overcame his reticence. Every year he received a pencil box from his parents which he didn't like. This year, with Neil's help, they transformed the pencil box into a paper airplane, symbolizing Todd's breaking away from monotony and overcoming his inner demons. Neil had always loved acting but was suppressed by his father. Coming from a middle-class family, his father wanted him to be a banker or a doctor, never caring about what Neil truly desired. Their conversations always ended with a strict and formal acknowledgement from Neil. However, after meeting Mr. Keating and being encouraged by him, Neil discovered what he truly wanted. He auditioned for a play and against all odds won the lead role. Neil was not alone in this journey of self-discovery. There were other students who also embraced their true selves. Charlie, one of Neil's friends known for his boldness, had recently submitted an article to the school newspaper in the name of the Dead Poets Society, satirizing the school's policy of not admitting female students. During a school assembly, the principal sternly addressed this issue, vowing to find the perpetrator. Before the principal could finish, Charlie dramatically answered a ringing phone in front of everyone, claiming claiming it was God calling to say the school should admit female students. As expected, Charlie faced consequences for his defiance. In the wake of this incident, the principal took notice of Mr. John Keating, the teacher who encouraged free thinking. From the principal's perspective, young students didn't need the ability or right to think independently. As long as they got into prestigious universities, their education was deemed successful, regardless of the methods. Mr. Keating attempted to argue that education should be about fostering self-thought, but the principal dismissed his efforts, equating them to child's play and undervaluing the impact on the students. Later, Mr. Keating sought out Charlie to discuss his call from God stunt. Expecting approval from the freedom-promoting teacher, Charlie was surprised when Mr. Keating criticized his actions as unwise, potentially leading to expulsion. Mr. Keating's gentle reprimand aimed to teach the importance of not equating passion with recklessness or rebellion. One day, Neil returned from the theater to find his father waiting, having discovered Neil's secret application to the play. Neil couldn't voice his defiance against his father's accusations. Under his father's for your own good philosophy, Neil's vibrant inner world had always been dimmed. Encouraged by Mr. Keating, Neil still participated in the final performance, achieving great success. However, the applause that affirmed Neil was to his father like daggers to the heart. He dragged Neil away from the theater and confronted him at home, categorically forbidding any future acting. That night, Neil faced his father's dominance as he always had, until overwhelming emotions led him to a tragic and irreversible act of defiance. Following Neil's death, his friends were engulfed in grief. With such a significant incident, the school sought a scapegoat, quickly targeting Mr. Keating, the advocate of independent thought, as the primary culprit. The principal coerced the students into signing a statement blaming Mr. Keating for Neil's death. Under pressure, almost everyone signed except for the rebellious Charlie, who refused. His resistance only drew more trouble from the school, making him an example to deter others. Mr. Keating's dismissal became inevitable. During a new cultural class taught by the principal, who urged the students to abandon romanticism for realism, Mr. Keating returned to collect his belongings. At that moment, a spirit of youthful defiance began to stir. The shyest among them, Todd, was the first to turn to Mr. Keating, soon followed by others standing on their desks in a silent yet powerful tribute to their great teacher. This act symbolized the courage to seek beauty in life, a force not derived from wealth but inherent in every young heart. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.